Hola, y'all. This is Jay with Behind the Grind, the professional GM Chronicles. I also go by PSG No One, and you can find me on Start Playing Games. And it's always great to be able to do this. We are blessed today to have with us Respite, who is a professional game master, also on Start Playing Games, and he's agreed to be able to sit down with us a little bit and just let us kind of pick his brain and interview him and hopefully be able to help other people that are budgeting or want to be or curious professional game master wannabes like me learn a little bit. So again, Respite, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself. This is your chance to be able to brag on some of your accomplishments and just have a little bit of fun.
All right, well, let's go. So, my name is Mark. Most people just call me Respite or just DM because I run a lot of games. I very rarely get to be a player, and I've been pretty much I've been running Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition as a dungeon master since like 2016, I will say, consistently. Pretty much, I skip maybe a month or two for a break, but that's the longest I've been able to go without running games for people. And yeah, I've been on Start Playing for now over 2.5 years, something like that. And I have 700 games under my belt, as well as I think somewhere in the like 30s ballpark of good reviews. And I got a small community of people that really enjoy playing with me, and I enjoy playing with them. So I think that's probably the best thing about this whole thing,
Very cool.
getting a
And
community.
if I understand correctly, you are overseas on the other side of the pond. You are in.
Yes, I'm in Central/Eastern Europe. I live in Slovakia.
That is very cool.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, so if you don't mind me asking, what first got you into tabletop role playing games? What got you into D&D?
So around the time that I kind of was looking into maybe doing something with my friends that wasn't just playing video games, because no good video games were coming out at the time and my PC can run them. There was this little show called Critical Role starting off on Twitch. I was like, yep, looks cool. Let's give it a try. And I gave it a few tries. The first few attempts were horrendous. They were awful. But with each failure, I learned, and eventually I managed to run a 5-year-long campaign for my group of IRL friends from like 2018 to 2023. That was, I think, probably like, in terms of longest running, that was definitely it, yeah. That's how it got started.
Yeah, how'd you get into being a game master?
Nobody else wanted to do it, and I was the only one with enough time on my hands and the desire to play the game to, well, just select myself as the dungeon master, because nobody else was going to do it if I wasn't going to.
Okay. Do you remember the first time you were running a game, and how did it go?
I do. I remember tried getting into Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition. My brain could not understand what a hit dice was, so that did not go well. Gave it a break, went back to 5th edition, and was a bit improvisational. Always, I've been running on virtual tabletops such as Roll20. That's where I got started, and it was fine, I will say.
Nothing spectacular. Didn't blow up in your face or anything.
I definitely was not as consistent. It was a first time D&D session anybody runs is going to be horrendous.
You did better than me. The first game I ran, my players quit. They were just like, "This is not fun. We don't want to do this anymore." And I was like, yeah, I suck at this." But that was many moons ago.
I did get abandoned by my group of friends, but that was because World of Warcraft Legion came out, and they were like, "Man, we want to play that," and I was like, "Damn." Guess I have to find some strangers to play this with me.
What's been your most memorable campaign, and what about it made it stands out to you?
Most memorable campaign, funny enough, was not my longest running one with friends. Though, in general, I adore the adventure for 3rd edition called the Red Hand of Doom. That is like my beloved adventure. Absolutely love that one. And every time I run it, I always remember how certain parties went through it. I think I think a certain group that I finished like last year had probably the most memorable run of it. Just because the adventure is good and lets the players really interact with the narrative in unique ways, because it's a good mix of sandbox but also somewhat linear.
Okay. Um, have you ever had a session go off the rails? And if so, how did you handle it?
I did. I absolutely did. I remember I was running a certain session in Curse of Strahd, and I remember the sentence was, "We burned the burgomaster's house." Uh, as they were like running from the guards, I was thinking that they would do like a hostage situation, and it's like, no, we throw him in, we burn the house down, and we fight off the guards. I was like, all right, let's take a 5 minute break. I'll try to figure something out, and we'll continue after the break with whatever my brain finds as an acceptable outcome of this. Uh, that was, I think, the most powder keg situation any of my groups got into.
I love that. I had never really thought about that. It is literally a case of time out. I need to think about this one. So
Yeah,
y'all
yep,
go
yep,
get your
yep.
stuff taken care of. So I love that. That's great. Um, what or who inspired your approach to game mastering when you first started?
Well, this is probably going to be a very, very common answer. Matt Mercer, of
Okay.
course. He is the Jesus, even as the looks of being the Jesus of being a dungeon master. But honestly, I kind of also came around to Matt Colville's kind of idea of running games and it being entertaining. I remember just binge watching his running the game videos for tabletop RPGs in general.
Very
I feel
cool.
I've meshed with his ideas a
Okay.
bit more.
So, are there any people that you've had as game masters you'd like to give a shout out to, or that have been role models for you?
I definitely do. I have a pair of dungeon masters that I would say I'm friends with. One being Camrox, who I think you've also featured. Cameron's a great dungeon master, and he runs a very fun game. With the fun being like a capital FUN. I think he runs a very enjoyable experience, and his pacing is great. He does not let things dawdle for too long, which I always appreciate. And another would be Liquid Snake, also Nick by his name. He's also on Start Playing, I think. And I've been playing in his Pathfinder game for now a year, and that's been a lot of fun.
Very cool. Game masters being players in other people's games. I think that's a great
That is
way to be
very
able to learn.
important.
And yeah, I can see that being very important. If you don't mind, why is it important to you?
It is good to be able to. So, you usually, as a dungeon master, you are behind the screen and you are the entertainer, you're the manager, you're the performer, you're the lore keeper, you're the person who handles everything that's wrong, you're everything,
Hmm?
right? And it's good to be on the other side of the screen and see how somebody else handles that role and what you can appreciate that they do better, but also see what they do worse than you, actually. And both of those qualities are very good because you can't really do that to yourself in a mirror because it's very hard to comprehend what you're doing while you're doing it at the same time. And it also lets you look into how it feels playing through these certain situations and appreciating, all right, if this were to happen in one game I run, it could be fun. But also, if you play through that and you realize it's not fun, no, then it's probably a good idea to not do, oh, you are kidnapped, or oh, your magic item is lost. It's good to be on the other side and be a player every once in a while
That's a
to
very
appreciate.
insightful answer. To be honest with you, nobody's approached that. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for that. Okay, we're gonna pivot a little bit, and we're now going to
Hmm.
go to the philosophy of your philosophy on game mastering.
Hmm.
How do you balance a narrative telling with player agency? Player agency being what many people perceive as free will, and narrative
Hmm.
storytelling, what some people will crassly refer to as like railroading.
Railroading,
How do you,
right?
how do you handle a balance between the two?
So I really dislike the use of railroading in talking about a linear storyline.
Okay.
That is not railroading. That is a storyline. That's point number one that I would like to bring up to people. Railroading is when that one storyline plays out in one way, and that one way is reinforced by the DM perpetually or just forcefully.
Okay.
That is railroading. Yeah. When it comes to balancing narrative storytelling and player agency, I believe most dungeon masters on start playing usually run pre-published adventures for various tabletop RPGs, and those usually have that storyline that the designer has planned for you to play out. That is completely fine. That is not a railroad. That is a story. The way that story plays out is up to the players. Pretty much, in how I would just summarize this, would be you as the dungeon master should set up the story and leave blank spaces for the players' decisions to write the way that the story moves forward in the way that they prefer. A lot of adventures lack this, funnily enough, and they are just go there, kill boss, go next, find this guy, and it's just A, B, C, D, and end of campaign. The best way to look at it is just eraser over some of those lines, over those steps, and let the players customize those steps. Of course, it will be the same sequence of story beats, but it will be a bit more custom because they influence the story.
Very cool.
That's my ethos in how at least like pre-written adventure should be run.
Dude, that's great. That really is. What's your approach to dealing with challenging and disruptive players at the table?
Oh, kick them instantly.
Okay. What constitutes challenging or disruptive? What have you seen reasons for kicking people out?
Challenging or disruptive. So I will say I am the kind of dungeon master that needs a bit of also rapport with the player. So I need to like them or just like feel how they approach the game and hope that synergizes with the rest of the party as well as just my style in general. Because if everybody rubs shoulders with one another and one person is like sandpaper on the other's shoulders, then that is never going to be a good fit. That is never going to be a comfortable play environment. Usually this just manifests in maybe being bossy or reinforcing a bit of their own view of the game over anybody else's, hogging the spotlight, or maybe being unpleasant. Thankfully, I only had very few players like this. So I think this is probably a bit more common in free games, but I have not encountered it very often in paid games.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. If a person's putting money into an experience, it is in their best interest not to upset the rest of the party or the GM and lose their money. So yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, cool. In the instances where you've had to kick somebody, has there been any retaliation? Has there been any, I don't know, what kind of payback have you seen? Or do they just go their merry way and just don't cross your path again?
At most, I've had a bit of an argument over personal chat messages and maybe a threat that I would not be recommended to their friends.
Okay.
And that's about it.
Totally
no
fair.
repercussions beyond that.
Okay.
Not even a poll review, thankfully.
That's really cool. All right. Okay, so this is a little bit interesting question. Do you think the game master should prioritize the story, the rules, or players' enjoyments? What's your standing on that?
So, all three, in my opinion, are equally important, funny enough. The players are there to experience the story. They wish to experience the story through the game's mechanics and what is called kind of like ludonarrative dissonance, if you're familiar with the term, where the game and the game's mechanics as well as the narrative immerse you into the game, and they do not break each other's immersion. Kind of. Yeah. So people like the storytelling. They like the storytelling because the mechanics go with that storytelling, and then, well, they enjoy the game. If any of those two previously break, then the game is not enjoyable, and everything needs to be balanced out. Usually, in my opinion.
That's a great observation. How do you create a sense of immersion for your players?
So creating a sense of immersion is kind of how to say it. I don't need to immerse myself, for example, nor do I have to tell my players like, "Oh, immerse yourselves now. We're going in deep." No, I just start narrating. I put on a bit of a different tone. I play some music in the background. I put up a scene on the virtual tabletop of choice, and we're there. Role playing. We're immersed. And then when somebody like cracks a joke and breaks immersion, I joke as well because the immersion is broken. But once we've had our laughs, then we're back in, and I just continue to better the situation and narrate, and immersion is back.
Very cool. Um, okay, so this is one of our most controversial questions that we run into. So bear with me on
Mm-hmm.
this one. What is your stance on fudging dice rolls?
Fudging dice rolls for me,
Yeah.
never. The
Okay.
dice are sacred. The dice are sacred because they are just as much of a player in the narrative as the dungeon master or the book that or the book or adventure he's running or the players are. The sheer power of chance, chaos itself, I think, is just as good of a companion at the table as any other member of the party. Yep.
Okay.
It is what my one of my players like to refer to it as. Oh, I got crit by the monster. Oh, I rolled a natural one. It's a canon event. I die here, and they just accept it. Yeah, it's a canon event, and that's I think the good approach to it
Well, after
because
running 700
yeah,
games, I can see that scenario happening. So,
yeah, like it just happens, and you have to roll with it. And funnily enough, that's some of the best experiences that some of my tables have had early on into the adventure. They lose a beloved player character, and well, they name themselves after them. The party names themselves after that player character, and go follow his legacy throughout the adventure. And failing forward is a very good lesson to have in tabletop RPGs.
there you go. Okay, we're going to pivot once again, and now we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about crafting worlds and narratives. Your approach to some of these things. What is your approach to world building in your campaign? Do you start building top down or do you go bottom up? In other words, you start with a big map and choose a part on the map and start kind of, your adventure there, or do you start everything in like a village and then you kind of grow out from there? What's your approach?
I definitely think starting small and then going big is definitely the better approach. Definitely prioritize whatever the players will actually care about. They don't care about the gods or the creation myth when they are on session 2 and they are in Gobbledygook, the town near the river. Start from the town, expand out to the countryside, then out to the kingdom, and then eventually all the way out to the cosmos if your players are interested. If not, don't don't burn yourself out. I think that's. I also recommend maybe trying to take a look at stuff like some of the official settings. Forgotten Realms got quite a bit of popularity in D&D because of Baldur's Gate 3. People are very familiar with that setting now, so just take a look at it, make it your own, and well, that's the only version of that setting that's important to you. Start small, go big, or use a pre-written kind of setting to inspire yourself, so you don't have to do all the building blocks of deities and all that.
Okay. What's your process for creating memorable NPCs?
Memorable NPCs. So, funnily enough, the most memorable NPCs are just whatever the party stumbles into and they just latch onto, and then I give them a more defined personality, I would say. Um, Usually, this is either the small monster companion, kind of like a kobold or something that they just fall in love with because I have to do this dumbass voice for them, and they like to torment me. That's one thing. Um, or it is someone that is like somewhat important in the narrative, but also like endearing or somebody they can feel for. Uh, I would say like retired adventurers are a very good fit for such an NPC. If you want to try and give that a try, as like, oh, I want to make a relatable NPC, do a retired adventure. Good mentor figure
Mhm.
in a storytelling narrative where there is not a lot of mentor figures, so that's a good way of handling it. if you just want something quickly relatable.
Okay. Go
Relatable,
ahead.
interesting, and something that the players might find fun or interesting or related to them. That's the best way.
Okay.
Related specifically to a player.
How do you incorporate a player's background into the larger campaign narrative? Especially in a
When it
game like
comes,
running with things that start playing games, I'd imagine that you have a pretty big variety of players coming in and out and stuff like that. So you got a character,
yes.
or a guy who comes up and says, "Hey, here's my character. He's got this backstory here." How do you handle that?
Usually, I plead with players. I
Okay.
beg them on my hands and knees to give me a not a novel, but a goddamn bullet point of their backstory. Um, if they can condense their backstory into these like important dots that are the bullet points of how they got here, I usually like to tell them to hey, give me someone that's alive from your backstory so I can maybe introduce them, or maybe some kind of antagonist that I can bring up as part of the narrative. And usually that's about it. Sometimes I even let players create an NPC. I found that actually works beautifully. They can go ahead and make their own non-player character that is related to them, and I just take that, I put it into the game. Perfect.
Okay.
Saves
I
me work, makes them happy.
hadn't thought about that, and that's a great idea. I like that. Also gives the characters or the people buy-in in the game. That's a
Yes.
important aspect there. That's great.
Yes.
What advice do you have for GMs who struggle with improvisation during sessions?
So that is improvisation is very hard. Improvisation is very hard. It mainly comes from experience. Um, I am the kind of dungeon master that likes to over prepare most of the time, but I also just run like pre-written adventures. So after I run it like one or two times, I remember it like the back of my hand, and I barely look into the book. Um, when it comes to, oh, this is unexpected, or the adventure did not foresee this, you can improv in a way that you think the players would accept it as making sense. But honestly, it's just experience. The more you run, the more you will remember, oh, like, oh, that situation was cool. Maybe I'll just throw it back into here in this different campaign.
Okay,
It's mainly about experience.
that makes sense. That really does. Okay, we're going to shift once again, and this is where many of our viewers are really trying to get some down to the nuts and bolts of professional
Mm-hmm.
GMing. So, what does a day of a pro GM looks like? What's your typical day look like?
So, me, since I am in Central Europe, and for the time zone difference, which I believe is usually like 5 to 8 hours between most people in America, depending on how far away you are, which
Hmm.
time zone, which part of America you are in. Um, because of that, I run games that would be for you folks somewhere around midnight. And I wake up at 6 a.m. and I just run games to the dismay of my neighbors, I presume. Uh, uh, and then I pretty much after like 9 a.m. I just do kind of whatever. I either go outside to buy groceries or go work out. And then I come back home, get some lunch, breakfast, coffee, yada yada. Uh, Relax for like at least 2 to 3 hours, and then do like 2 to 3 hours of prep, and eventually at 6 p.m. I run another game, and then that goes until 9 p.m. and then I go to sleep and restart, and that's pretty much how I run most of my days during the week.
Okay. What challenges do you face? It sounds like that you might have some logistics in regards to time zones, but what are the challenges do you see?
Challenges, 100% worry about two things. If you plan to run a lot of games, you will be doing a lot of prep if you're planning to run them on a virtual tabletop. That means you're going to be sitting on your sweet behind for quite the while. So get a good chair, and make sure to get like a watch or something that will tell you to stand up and move around, because you don't want back pains or anything like that. I'm only 24. I don't want to get back pains before I turn 30 at least. Um, that'd be definitely number one. Get some, be a bit mobile. It's a very sitting necessary job. And second, challenges. Hmm. definitely getting your name out there is
Okay.
quite difficult. I would recommend probably starting some short adventures or getting beginners into the game at a lower price, and just getting your name out there and getting some good customers, but I would also say good players, good friends on board to have you run for them whatever game they and you are interested in. Um, I would say also have something that makes you stand out. Even though it's rough, it's tough. You can fall into the sea of beginner GM. I'll just go for a more defined GM, even though it may cost more. Try to focus on something that you think you do better than the majority of dungeon masters, be it voice acting, be it maybe like audio quality with like music and stuff like that. Stand out is definitely what I would say. I stood out because I have a lot of knowledge with Foundry Virtual Tabletop, a program that I run my games on. um, I get called by my players a Foundry wizard, uh, because I know how that virtual tabletop works, and I get to make it work at 100%, uh, just barely beneath the threshold of crashing consistently.
Well, as
So
I say,
yeah, stand out.
technology is today's magic, and those who can operate those
Hmm.
technologies are different types of magic users. So I
Oh
can
yeah,
totally see that. That makes sense.
yeah. Challenges, and the last and the biggest, burnout.
Okay.
Don't get burned out. Take a week or two if you feel that you are no longer having fun running the game. Say, hey, folks, I'm getting a bit of burnout. I want to focus on something else or maybe go traveling for a bit. We'll be resuming in maybe 1 or 2 weeks. This is to ensure that the quality of the games continues as expected without me losing the passion for it. I've said that, for example, like last December, and people took it, and we were good to go once January hit, for example.
Okay. I think it's a very valid point there, especially with the burnout. I've always been curious about that. Taking something you love and doing it for a while and still having that same passion. I think that's actually one of the
Yes.
questions we talk about a little bit later. Okay, so what does your business model look like? How many games a week do you run?
So I run 9 paid games a week.
Okay.
This means that I run 2 games on Monday, 1 game on Tuesday, and I get to play 1 game in the afternoon. That's the Pathfinder one I play in. 2 games on Wednesday, 1 game on Thursday, because I just need, after 3 days of waking up early, I need one day to sleep in. And then Friday 2 games, and then Saturday like 1 game. I
Okay.
tried running 2 games in a row. My brain cannot comprehend how people like Cameron can do it. He's probably just built different from me. I can't do it. I have to have like a full day break between games, one in the morning, one in the evening.
All right. Um, Prep time. What kind of prep time do you put into your games?
So prep time is rough. Depends definitely on what kind of tabletop you use, what kind of system you use, and what kind of games you like to run. Me, since I pride myself on how I have Foundry VTT set up, I am a prep time workaholic, let's call it. Whenever a major update comes out, I spend a straight week locked in this room and getting everything updated so that next week we can play. This is unfortunately also the vacation weeks, which do not spare me the burnout. Besides that, just prepping for like sessions, I would say, um, depending on the adventure, but let's call it like fifth edition because that's most popular. Try to prepare for an amount of time that you find it is worth it. If you plan to run the adventure multiple times, which I recommend, I would say go in on it and archive it so you don't have to prep it ever again. Even though you can spend like 3 to 6 hours preparing a single session, if you do have people running through that adventure multiple times, in the long run, after like 2 or 3 runs, that is worthwhile for you. And if there is quality in it, well, everybody's happy. It just takes a bit from your free time on that day when you're prepping it, but it's worth it.
Okay.
In general, prep-wise, I run multiple campaigns, and I have these campaigns in like a catalog, and I just pull them out when a new party starts, and I don't have to worry about it because I've been going at this for 2.5 years. So I prepped a lot in the past. Now I just drop an adventure into Foundry, and we're playing. Don't have to do anything for the next year or so.
Okay. How many players per session do you get?
I know that the dungeon master doesn't start playing like to run 6 players and the like. I can't. Honestly, I find that to be both not extremely enjoyable for me because that's herding cats. 5 cats is enough. 6 cats is a bit too much.
Amen to that.
Uh, um, it is a good number for for people that just want to make sure that their game does not expand if 2 people leave, because that is very, very, very often. However, in those sessions where everybody is present, I also feel that the players feel a bit finagled of their own time in the spotlight because there is too many actors on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My preferred number is 5.
Okay.
5 is the magic number for me. If one person is missing, 4 is completely fine and expected. I can run one of the player characters as an NPC or pass it on to another player. If another person can't make it unexpectedly, then 3 players is still runnable, completely fine. And 2 players, that's not even worth running, right? So 5 is, in my opinion, the ideal number.
Okay. Um, I think we kind of touched on this earlier, but just to kind of expand on it, you run into new players all the time, or do you have pretty much the same bunch that jump in? I mean, are you okay? So this brings an interesting question. Let's skip down to one of the last ones of this section. What's your ratio typically of like one shots versus campaigns?
One shots, I maybe run like 3 a year.
Okay.
I nearly never run one shots. In my opinion, one shots they stress me out too much, even as an experienced DM. You keeping everybody on track and pushing to get them to the end is not enjoyable for me personally.
Okay.
I much prefer running like shorter adventures, but mainly I just run big campaigns, and I get a lot of returning players who just seem to enjoy me as their dungeon master. And well, I think, yeah, from one of my first games that I started, I believe 4 people that initially joined still play with me to this day weekly.
That's impressive.
For 2.5 years.
And they pay, and they
Yep.
consistently go through. That really says something right there. That's remarkable.
Every week, except one guy, but he became consistent again.
All good.
He
All
used to
good.
sleep in.
Okay, so this might be a private question, and you don't have to answer this if you want to. We'll just either edit it or go forward. But this is something a lot of other game masters, beginning game masters, want to know. But how much can a game master? How long does it take to get established, in your opinion? And how much can a game master expect to be able to make per month, per year, type of deal?
Right. I live in Slovakia. I'm in a Central Europe country where the income that I make as a dungeon master is very good. However, we also have like half the income and probably like half the prices of people in the US.
Okay.
So in that comparison, I make very good money. To kind of take a look at it, I run those 9 games. I currently had to raise my prices to, let's say, $25 per player, 5 players, and the start playing takes a cut from the player side and also from me. So I'm left with 85% of that.
Okay.
Roughly on like average, I end up making somewhere in the ballpark of like 2.4K US dollars a month. Roughly somewhere in this like $700 a week on like decent weeks without a lot of people skipping, stuff like that.
Okay.
When I started out, I started out because of an injury, and it was something I was forced to do, or sell my PC. I didn't want to sell my PC because it was a very good deal way back when I bought it. And I just started as kind of like a side thing to run and to sustain myself. And when I returned to my job, I continued running, and after about like 4 months, December hit, and I went from running 2 games consistently to now having 2 more interested groups. And then at the end of January, it boomed to running like 6 to 7 games a week.
Wow.
And I did not have to go back to my job, which was very, very nice because I got fired.
You're right. Definitely a blessing. Okay. So when you're dealing with other people, especially relying on their income, how do you deal with situations like no shows?
No shoes. So I would definitely recommend to anyone that starts being a dungeon master, contemplate just like the basic policies that you will have on your server. Start playing, for example, since that is a service we are commonly knowledgeable of. Lets people skip on the session and just let the dungeon master know 24 hours before it is due that they can't make it, and they will not be charged nothing. Right? That is a very good system. I love that. In my games, I have it that if you did not skip and you did not even mention before those 24 hours are up that you cannot participate, I will not charge you. If you do it within that 24-hour window and you're late on the skip out, you'll just tell me, hey man, it's an emergency, and I will just once a month let that go. I will let people just do no shows. If they don't let me know that there is an emergency and they don't respond when I ask them, "Hey, are you going to be able to make it?" Uh, I just take their money. If they're going to ghost me, I am not obligated to return the money. They scheduled, they signed up, they should show up because they already had their credit card ready to be pipped.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Um,
Keeping it fair. Also, like sometimes people just can't make it. Somebody has to drive their grandma to a hospital. I'm not going to charge you because there is an actual serious real life emergency. Be human when it comes to this is probably the best engagement. That one time session will be repaid 1,000-fold when that person actually likes you as a human being.
I think that we want to give individuals the benefit of the doubt, and
Yes.
knowing that it can be abused. Hey, I took my grandfather, to the hospital, and what they're doing is probably, drinking or, going to see a girlfriend or hanging out with their friends.
If
But
they do that, I'm fine. If they do it once a month, I don't mind.
it makes sense. It does. Okay. Um, how does your do you still have as much fun gymming now as you did when you're doing it for friends? Has there been a perspective change?
That definitely was, and I think I'm actually kind of enjoying it a bit more.
Okay.
The main thing is I get to. So when you run for friends, they're not gonna be like, "Oh my God, pat on the back! You were so good on that session that you've been running for us for like 2 years now." Eventually, those compliments will stop, and you'll be like, "It's another Saturday. Guess I'm running another D&D session." Uh, that is like how it is in those friend groups. But when it comes to running for strangers, it is very healthy to compliment them when they make like, "Oh wow, you used a rule that I did not know existed," and they're like, "Oh cool, I got a compliment. Maybe I'll compliment them back." And then there's that feedback loop positivity that makes everybody get that serotonin in their brain and be like, "Ooh, this is fun," or being social and stuff. Um, so that is, I think I'm enjoying it more because I get a variety of people in my games. I get to hang out with various individuals, and I also just get to get. I don't know what it is that I enjoy so much about it. Maybe it's a bit of showing off how much of a nerd I am. I think. I don't know. It's just a good feeling to be able to have people enjoy something that you're pretty good at, and well, get that good feeling from people enjoy themselves.
Make no mistake, nerds rock.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
man.
Okay. What are your paying players' expectations? I mean, what do they react to? Do they react to? Is it primarily storytelling? Is it part of the inclusion, as you mentioned, ambiance, music, good maps, different tokens? I mean, what's been the key for you that you've seen?
Mhm. Consistency.
Okay.
Consistency. This means that you pretty much Um, so I have a very, very extended kind of thought on this. Consistency in running at least 7 out of 10 sessions in terms of like rating. If you know that you will be running a session that will be boring or will just be not like, oh, something memorable, tell ahead to the party that, hey, this session, maybe it's necessary for a lot of these like low energy conversations, you guys exploring this area, something. Just tell them, hey, this session will be a 4 out of 10, but it will make the other sessions be like an 8 out of 10. And you have to keep that promise. No adventure is always a straight 7 or a 7 going up or down slightly. There are those bottom points of just general storytelling structure. Build up, payoff, build up, payoff, build up, payoff. And build up is never enjoyable, but payoff is very, very highly enjoyable. So if on average that single story, let's say it's like 3 sessions, one is 4 out of 10, the second one is a 6 out of 10, but then the third one is like a 9 out of 10 because it was a good payoff. Well, then that was inconsistency, a pretty damn good session or arc of the story. Consistency is the main thing. Good maps, good visuals, good music. You know what to do. You show up on time, and you let the players do what they think they want to do. Let's say it's like that. Even if it may not be beneficial to them, just let them rock out and improvise some of the rules every once in a while. But also do remember the game has rules, and they also need to be adhered to. There is surprisingly a lot of people in just tabletop RPG community that think they want a free-form game, but they don't. They love the rules, and when the rules make sense for them, and when the rules support the storytelling, that is when they really start to enjoy the game, and they can break it every once in a while.
Okay, I like that. That's well put. Okay, we're going to pivot for our next section here, and we're basically talking about the role, our role as professional dungeon masters on the online TTRPG community. So, the first question we got is, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing game masters in the modern TTRPG community? What do you see as our biggest challenge right now?
Biggest challenge I definitely think is maybe generative AI in terms of narrative storytelling, but I would say we should probably not be worried too much about it because AI is very good at reproducing, but not very good at creating.
Okay.
Creating, especially when it comes to creativity stuff. It can copy paste, mix images, and draw narratives from certain books, but it will never come up with something unique or personal to a specific group or player's character, stuff like that. That would be like my only worry, and when it comes to us as like dungeon masters specifically, it's a creative work that I think will hopefully never be replaced by artificial intelligence. And even if it would not be the same. You can't banter and talk shit with an AI like you can with your dungeon master.
Well put. How has the rise of actual play content and streaming impacted the way you approach game mastering?
I personally don't watch a lot of actual play. I am more of the person that's like, well, I get to run this game 9 times a week, so I don't need to spend more of my time watching other people play.
Mm-hmm.
I've personally not had any like, oh, let's do like this from Critical Role or another podcast or something like that. No, nothing relevant for me here. Sorry.
Okay. What role do you think a professional GM plays in the shaping of the TTRPG landscape?
I would say the average professional dungeon master, and by average I mean a professional dungeon master that sticks to it, not someone that just tries it and did not stick to it. I would say like a person like me or some of the dungeon masters I know would be that we set kind of like a golden standard. Like this is potentially like something that a really good friend group dungeon master would like to do if they had infinite time and a decent amount of resources to dedicate to this, as if it was their actual work. Um, I would say, yeah, just setting kind of like a golden standard would be um, my idea. Although I will say I do enjoy even some of the like how to say it, low budget adventures. I just love sometimes just hanging out and there is like a static screenshot of something from World of Warcraft, some music in the background on YouTube, and we just role play and throw some dice. That is good as well. It is just this would be like the setting a high standard for good budgeted D&D would be like my idea. Other than that, I don't think contribution wise allowing perhaps people who do not have like a community around them that would wish to play with them a space to open up and interact with. That would also be like a good role. But I would say those are the two predominant roles that we fill.
Okay. Um, how do you feel about the responsibility of representing diversity and inclusion in your games?
Whew, that is a question. Me personally, I don't. I just kind of run the world as I am either told by the book or how I find it to be fun. I don't really get into diversity politics, or nor do I like purposefully change a character's race to be able to make a nice pie chart graph on my second monitor. Uh, just run it as it is. It's fantasy. I don't think it needs to be um, necessarily influenced by the real world, and nor do I think that that it should influence the real world, especially when it comes to like some of the older materials where there is like dark elves or orcs and their potential attribution to like what people want to sensationalize as like correlation to current like racial dynamics in
Uh
the
huh.
real world. I would say just cut that thread in there, separate those two, but you can still look at them individually and maybe say like in the narrative here if they could be understood differently, and make it a bit more changing a point of view on the other part of the mirror, which would be the real world situation. Try to make it beneficial, but don't let it just be correlated between each other.
Okay. What advice would you give to aspiring GMs looking to make a name for themselves online?
Whew. Run a lot of sessions
Okay.
and even do it for free. Run a lot of sessions. I have started doing this when I have been running D&D for roughly, yeah, I started in 2022. I have been running D&D at that point for 6 years consistently. For strangers as well, and also for friends. I've had plenty of groups. Get a lot of practice in. You will not make it if you are a below average or average dungeon master. You need to be above average to get started. Is my opinion of that.
Okay.
Run a lot, and for free, for friends, whatever.
Well, you'd made mention earlier that to highlight what they're good at, be it
Hmm.
character acting, voice acting, visuals or whatnot. How do you emphasize that? How would you recommend somebody emphasize something like that?
I would definitely say that Start Playing Funnily Enough has a really good system for this. When somebody plays with you, they can leave a review for
Hmm.
you, and those reviews can be tagged with these markers that pretty much highlight three of your most prominent qualities. For me, for example, it's storytelling, visual aid, and creativity, I think. And I would say, yeah, I agree with those. I'm pretty good at narration because I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm pretty good at visual aid because I do a lot of work on Foundry. And creativity, it's because I know the game inside out and I can let people be creative without breaking the game. Those would be like, by what Start Playing and my players have said, my three utmost qualities. Um, of course, you cannot stand out if you don't have the experience to stand out from the rest of the dungeon master populace. Um, Run a lot of games, see what you fall into, because you will fall into something. You will either be amazing with voices, or good with just setting the tone and immersing players, or really good with creating fun and likable NPCs, or making cool storylines for your players. You will excel at something because that one part of the game will draw you in. That is why you will like the game.
Okay, very cool. Okay, so brings us to our last question that we have. What's your vision for the future of tabletop RPG? And how do you see yourself contributing to that evolution?
Hmm. What's your vision? I'm not sure if I can contribute to the evolution of tabletop RPGs, but I would. Hmm.
Given your age and the insight that you've displayed during this interview, I would have a hard time believing that.
Hmm.
You've still got a bunch of years theoretically in front of you, and you've got some pretty deep insight in regards to this. You have a position where you could have an influence on this, Mark. So
Perhaps.
it's an interesting observation. I mean, what do you see? What do you think you could contribute at this point, not knowing what you're going to develop into, say, in another 15, 20 years?
Right. The future of tabletop RPGs, I definitely think, is going to go more and more digital. That is, I think, just undeniable, and probably is going to be something that a lot of people will lament, because it will lose that table side spirit of just people being together and just beer and pretzels, kind of D&D, dungeon crawling, and all that. Um, I think in general, RPGs are becoming a bit more narrative. A lot of, for example, like video games are more story based than they are about the really enjoyable gameplay. And I think that the video game market is very comparable to what is currently out in terms of like tabletop RPGs. Um, I think I think that Dungeons and Dragons will probably have another like a good solid 6 years of real popularity, but I do think that the bubble will burst eventually,
Okay.
and some system or a variety of systems that have been coming out from the people that have been influenced and have benefited from fifth edition's popularity will begin to distribute the market a bit. Um, I've been a victim of this. I've also started partaking of Pathfinder Second Edition because I'll be honest, I expected a bit more from the 2024 re-release of Fifth Edition, the update, as I would call it. I would not call it a new edition or even a point 0.5.
Okay.
I think that is like what I anticipate of tabletop RPGs in general.
All right, I can empathize with that. As a proponent for point system gaming, it's a system that my friend invented, and I'm trying to start playing games as a platform to be able to start kind of promoting it and get people to take a
Hmm.
look at it. You're right. I'm not saying this is it. I hope it is, but the fact of the matter is that there's people are looking for variety and some different things, and it's not unusual to find a person that's well versed in several different game systems. I'm not one of those guys, but there are a lot of people that are like that. You see that on Start Playing Games profiles when they talk about the different things they do. But that's really interesting on your part. I hadn't heard anybody buff that up, so that's good.
Yes.
Okay, we're at the end, Mark. What I'd like to do is give you a couple minutes just to be able to promote yourself and talk about some of the game systems or people or whatever you want to and stuff like that that you feel comfortable with. But I guess the big thing is just take it away.
All right, I guess I'm talking about myself now, so let's get to it. Like that hasn't been going on for the last 50 minutes. Yeah, I run on Start Playing. You can probably find me under some kind of tag, which I will definitely look up right now.
I will put it on the bottom of this thing, and people will be able to
That
get to your
that'll be amazing
yeah. People will
because
go get
I
to your
don't
profile.
self promote myself nearly often enough as I should. Yeah, I run on Start Playing Games. I run games on the Foundry Virtual Tabletop system. Uh, Virtual Tabletop system. Yep. Uh, I think I have a pretty damn good setup for people that want kind of like a video game light approach to tabletop gaming with the community. I have a server with over, I believe, like 50 active players currently on there. We play weekly. Currently starting up a few sessions, a few campaigns of Pathfinder Second Edition for anybody that is interested in that kind of system. I've been very much enjoying it, and yeah, this will be my third year on Start Playing, and hope to have many more yet to come.
Well, I want to thank you again, Mark Respite, for joining us and giving us some of your time and your insight. And I want to encourage the audience down there to put some comments on there. Interact with Mark and ask him questions, ask me questions. What we're looking for all the time is what are the things you guys want to see, people that you might want to talk with, just different things there. Just give us some insight there that what y'all are looking for. We love interacting with the community, but more than anything else, I need you to like, subscribe, and share the channel and the episode. Get that out there, especially for other GMs and professional GMs, wannabes out there. I think this can be a tremendous resource. Mark, again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
I'm very happy to have been able to talk with you. This was a lot of fun.
All right, guys and gals, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you so much for plugging in, and we look forward to our next one. God bless, guys.